The dim hum of the habitat module's life support filled the air like a distant heartbeat, steady but insistent. Captain Alara Voss wiped sweat from her brow, her calloused hands leaving a streak of grime across her forehead. She was the last of her crew awake, or so she thought, as she sealed the latest panel on the failing fusion core. The colony ship Endeavour had been adrift for weeks, snared in the gravitational pull of an uncharted asteroid field. Resources dwindled, water recyclers at 62% efficiency, oxygen filters browning at the edges. Alara's team, a ragtag mix of engineers and scientists from Earth's forgotten outposts, had volunteered for this run to Proxima Centauri. Now it felt like the stars mocked their ambition. She straightened, her spine protesting with a sharp twinge, and glanced at the viewport. Jagged rocks spun lazily outside, lit by the faint glow of a binary star system. No signals from the Galactic Council, no rescue beacons. Just silence. Alara wasn't one for panic. She'd pulled her family through the dust wars back on Earth, rationing hydroponic greens while orbital strikes lit the night sky. Grit was her anchor. But this? This was a slow bleed, and she could feel the crew's morale fraying like old rigging. Footsteps echoed from the corridor, boots on grated metal. Dr. Kai Rin emerged, his wiry frame hunched under the weight of a diagnostic tablet. Kai was the cautious one, always double-checking readings, his sharp mind a counter to Alara's bold pushes. "Captain," he said, voice low, "the core's stabilizing, but we've got a microfracture in the hull plating. If that field pulls us any closer to the big one out there." He trailed off, nodding toward the massive asteroid dominating the view, its surface pitted like a scarred lung. Alara nodded, forcing a wry smile. "Then we improvise. Like always." She clapped his shoulder, feeling the tension in his muscles. Kai had lost his partner to a council quarantine years ago, some bureaucratic nightmare over non-compliant gene mods. He didn't trust the stars or the aliens who claimed to govern them. "Rouse the others. We need fresh eyes on this." As Kai hurried off, Alara leaned against the console, her fingers tracing the faded Earth insignia on her sleeve. The Council had hailed this mission as progress, humanity's bold step into the fold, proving we belonged among the stars. But out here with the ship's alarms whispering warnings, Earth felt like a distant memory. A place of rest, maybe, where people could breathe without suits and dream without deadlines. She shook her head. No time for nostalgia. The asteroid loomed larger, and the Endeavour groaned in response. Captain Alara Voss gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles whitening as the ship's alarms blared a staccato rhythm through the dim-lit bridge. The view screen flickered with static, revealing glimpses of the asteroid field's jagged teeth closing in. "Status on the thrusters?" she barked, her voice slicing through the chaos like a laser. Engineer Kai Rin hunched over his panel, sweat beading on his forehead despite the recycled air's chill. "Offline, Cap. That micrometeor hit fried the relays. We're drifting, 5 minutes tops before we clip that big one dead ahead." His fingers danced across the keys, rerouting power with the precision of someone who jury-rigged half the fleet's engines in his career. Cautious by nature, Kai preferred simulations to surprises, but out here surprises were the only constant. From the navigation station, Lieutenant Mira Thorne shot a glance their way, her sharp eyes narrowing. Witty under fire, she always had a quip ready, but now her humor edged with grit. "Drifting? That's one way to put it. We're a sitting duck in a rock concert from hell." She punched in coordinates, her brave streak shining as she plotted an evasive vector that ignored the failing systems. No time for doubt. Myra's role had always been to push forward, consequences be damned. Alara straightened, her brave resolve anchoring the crew like gravity. She'd led them through worse, pirate skirmishes, solar flares, but this felt personal, a reminder of why Earth had pushed humanity to the stars. Not for glory but survival. The Council back home droned on about progress, allocating resources to shiny probes while colonies like theirs scraped by. "Options," she demanded, scanning the debris field. A massive boulder loomed, its surface pocked and unforgiving, promising to shear the hull like paper. Kai hesitated, his cautious mind weighing risks. "We could vent the aft cargo bay, use the explosive decompression to slingshot us clear. But it'll cost us supplies." Half our hydroponics gone, maybe more. The words hung heavy. Their resource shortage was already biting, rations thinning after the last supply run got waylaid by rivals from the outer rims. Mira leaned in, her voice low and urgent. Or I hacked the auxiliary boosters, overclocked them with the med-base power cells. Risky, could blow the whole system, but it'd give us a burst. She met Alara's gaze, the unspoken camaraderie between them sparking. They'd bonded over late-night watches, sharing stories of Earth's rest era, when humanity lounged in ignorance while the galaxy moved on. Alara nodded once, decisive. Do both. Kai prepped the vent. Mira, overclock on my mark. The bridge hummed with their hurried movements, tools clattering, screens glowing. Outside, the asteroids tumbled in silent menace, a stark image of isolation, humanity's fragile spark against the void's indifference. As Kai sealed the final hatch, a shudder ran through the ship. Venting in 3, 2. The explosive whoosh rocked them, panels rattling, and for a heartbeat, 0G twisted their stomachs. Myra's hack kicked in simultaneously, the boosters igniting with a roar that vibrated bones. The ship lurched, veering just shy of the boulder, debris pinging off the shields like hail. They cleared the field, but the cost lingered. Alarms quieted to warnings, hydroponics offline, their air recyclers straining. Alara slumped into her chair, exhaling. Damage report. Kai's voice came soft. We're alive, but it'll be lean from here. Mira flashed a tired grin. Progress right? Earth's way. In the quiet aftermath, the stars stretched endless, a promise and a threat. Captain Alara Voss gripped the console edge as the shuttle shuddered through the asteroid field's edge. Dust clouds bloomed like slow-motion explosions outside the viewport, and she could feel the vibrations rattling up her arms. Beside her, Jax hunched over the NAV screen, his fingers dancing across the holographic display, muttering calculations under his breath. We're clear of the debris belt, he said finally, wiping sweat from his brow. But that storm's gaining. If we don't reroute now, it'll fry the engines. Alara nodded, her jaw tight. The Council's latest decree had come down just hours ago. Progress demanded they push the mining ops deeper into the belt, no delays. Earthside brass had howled about rest rotations, but who listened to a backwater planet when the Alliance needed rare earths for their shiny new fleet? She glanced at the third occupant, Lyra, the avian liaison from the Council's envoy team. Feathers ruffled along her neck as she peered at the readouts, her beak clicking in what Alara had learned was frustration. This is ill-advised, Lyra said, her voice a melodic trill edged with static from the comms interference. The ion storm will scatter our signals. We lose contact with the outpost, and the Council blames inefficiency on your human grit. Jax snorted, not looking up. Grit's what got us this far. Council's all talk, progress without the sweat ain't progress. He punched in the new coordinates, the shuttle lurching as thrusters fired. Alara braced, watching the storm's purple haze creep closer on the scanners. Their plan was simple. Dock at Outpost Zeta, offload the survey data, and convince the site chief to delay the deep dive until the weather cleared. But simplicity had a way of crumbling out here. The first warning klaxon blared as they crested the field's rim. Alarms lit the cabin in red strobes, and Alara's stomach dropped. Shields at 60%, she barked. Jax, divert power from life support if you have to. Already on it, he replied, voice steady but laced with strain. The shuttle bucked like a wild thing, electrostatic discharges crackling across the hull. Lyra clutched her perch, eyes wide. Your vessel is not rated for this. Turn back. Alara shot her a look. And admit defeat? No. We push through. But doubt gnawed at her. The outpost signal flickered in and out, a ghost in the noise. If they couldn't warn the miners, lives hung in the balance. Dozens of her crew down there, drilling into unstable rock for minerals the Council deemed essential. Earth's rest? A joke when every load shipped back bought them another year of relevance. A massive surge hit then, the view screen whiting out in a blaze of plasma. The shuttle spun, controls sluggish under Alara's hands. Jax wrestled the stabilizers, cursing as secondary systems failed. Comms down. We're blind. Alara's mind raced, piecing together the last known vectors from memory. The outpost was dead ahead, or had been. Now, with the storm's fury enveloping them, it felt like chasing shadows in a blizzard. Lyra's feathers stood on end, her calm cracking. This is why Earth must yield. Your stubbornness endangers all. Stubbornness kept us alive through worse, Ilara snapped, yanking the yoke to compensate for the spin. The shuttle groaned, metal protesting, but she held course by instinct alone. Jax patched in manual overrides, his face pale in the emergency lights. For a heartbeat, silence fell save for the hum of straining engines. Then the outpost's beacon pulsed through, faint but insistent. There. Jax whooped, locking it in. They broke free of the worst, the storm's edge receding like a retreating beast. But as the docking clamps engaged with a metallic thud, Ilara saw the damage reports scrolling. Hull breaches sealed, but power reserves critically low. And on the comms, crackling back to life, came the chief's voice, urgent, laced with panic. Voss, storm hit us hard. Core's unstable. We need evac protocols now, or we're burying the lot. Ilara exchanged a grim look with Jax. Their delay pitch? Dead on arrival. The cost of progress just got personal. Elena gripped the edge of the shuttle's console, her knuckles whitening as the craft shuddered through the ion storm. Outside the viewport, jagged bolts of purple lightning clawed at the hull, illuminating the swirling chaos of Epsilon's upper atmosphere. Marco, strapped in beside her, muttered calculations under his breath, his fingers dancing over the auxiliary controls. We're punching through in 30 seconds, he said, voice steady despite the sweat beading on his forehead. Just hold her steady, Captain Reyes. Reyes nodded from the pilot's seat, his jaw set like granite. The veteran spacer had flown through worse, or so he claimed during the briefing back on the station, but even he couldn't hide the flicker of doubt in his eyes. Lena, the team's xenobiologist, sat in the jump seat behind them, her tablet clutched like a shield. She was the cautious one, always double-checking scans, but now her silence spoke louder than any warning. The shuttle lurched as a particularly vicious gust hit, slamming them sideways. Alarms blared, red lights pulsing across the cabin. Turbulence spiking. Reyes barked. Engines at 80%, pushing for 90. Elena's mind raced. This was supposed to be a routine survey, a follow-up to the Council's grand declaration of progress. The galactic body had hailed humanity's integration into the Federation as a triumph, promising shared resources and joint ventures. Earth, in turn, had pushed back with their own declaration, rest. Not stagnation, but balance, time to breathe amid the stars, to avoid the burnout that had nearly crippled their homeworld. This mission to Epsilon Prime was meant to test that philosophy, scouting for sustainable outposts where humans could pioneer without the endless grind. But the planet below had other ideas. Scans from orbit showed promising mineral veins, enough to fuel a dozen colonies, but the descent was a gauntlet of storms fed by the system's unstable core. Their initial plan, deploy drones for a soft landing, had failed spectacularly when the first wave shorted out in the electromagnetic soup. Brace! Marco shouted as the shuttle dropped like a stone. Elena's stomach flipped, the world tilting in a blur of clouds and sparks. Reyes wrestled the controls, sweat flying from his brow, while Lena whispered a string of probabilities under her breath, her caution turning to quiet resolve. They broke through with a final bone-rattling jolt, the storm's fury giving way to the hazy orange sky of Epsilon Prime. The ground rushed up, rugged canyons etched by ancient winds, dotted with crystalline spires that hummed faintly against the hull's sensors. Reyes pulled up at the last second, skimming a ridge before settling the shuttle onto a flat expanse of regolith. Dust billowed in slow-motion plumes, the low gravity making it linger like a shroud. Silence fell, broken only by the hiss of cooling engines. Elena unstrapped first, her legs unsteady as she stood. "Status?" she asked, voice cutting through the tension. "All systems nominal," Reyes replied, wiping his face with a sleeve. "We made it, Ambassador." "Barely." Marco grinned, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Told you my tweaks to the stabilizers would pay off. But let's not tempt fate twice." Lena was already at the airlock, scanning the exterior. Air's breathable but laced with particulates. Suits on. And those spires, they're not just pretty. Residual energy readings off the charts, could be why the drones fried. Elena nodded, pulling her helmet from its rack. The team moved with practiced efficiency, suiting up in the dim cabin light. Outside, the air hummed with an otherworldly resonance, the crystals pulsing like veins in the rock. This wasn't just a survey anymore, it was a test of their declaration. Progress without rest led to cracks, literal and otherwise. One wrong step, and those spires might claim them before they could prove Earth's way forward. They stepped out into the alien dawn, boots crunching on the brittle ground. Marco led the way to the nearest outcrop, his scanner beeping softly. Veins are deeper than we thought. If we can extract a sample without triggering a discharge. A low rumble echoed from the canyon ahead, the ground trembling faintly. Elena froze, her breath fogging the visor. Not an aftershock from the landing. Something else stirred in the depths, drawn perhaps by the shuttle's roar or the intruder's presence. Reyes hefted his toolkit, eyes narrowing. "Company," he muttered. "And it doesn't sound friendly." Lena's voice crackled over the comm, scans picking up movement, subterranean. "We need to pull back, reassess." But Elena pressed on, her bravery a quiet fire. Retreat now meant empty hands for the Council, a blow to Earth's fragile stance. "We adapt," she said simply. Marco marked the safe path. "Reyes, cover our flanks. Let's show them human grit isn't just words." The rumble grew, crystals flickering brighter, as the team ventured deeper into the canyon's maw. Captain Hilara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the Endurance's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with starlight, but the real storm brewed in the engineering bay, reports scrolling across her console. "Status, Ramirez?" she called, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. Lieutenant Marco Ramirez wiped sweat from his brow, his wiry frame hunched over a tangle of conduits in the dim glow of emergency lights. "It's bad, Cap. The core's destabilizing faster than we thought. That asteroid field we skimmed? It must have thrown off the alignment. If we don't reroute power in the next hour, we're looking at a cascade failure." His hands moved with practiced fury, sparks dancing from his tools like fireflies in the night. From the comm station, Dr. Lena Kai leaned forward, her sharp eyes scanning the incoming transmission from the Galactic Council. The alien diplomat's holographic form shimmered into view, a tall, iridescent Zenthari named Vorik, his tendrils twitching with impatience. "Human vessel Endurance, this is Council Liaison Vorik. Your declaration of rest delays the Progress Initiative. The frontier worlds require your ingenuity now. Why halt when the stars await?" Hilara shot a glance at Ramirez, who shook his head subtly. They'd pushed the ship too hard chasing that rogue signal, the one promising untapped resources for Earth's strained colonies. Now, with the core failing, their bold plan to jury-rig a bypass using salvaged Xenotech was unraveling. "Liaison," she replied, choosing her words like steps on thin ice, "our ingenuity comes with limits. We're nursing a critical fault. Pushing forward means risking the crew, and your precious progress." Vorik's form rippled, a sign of frustration in his species. "Limits are illusions, Captain. The Council has dispatched a repair drone. It will arrive in 30 minutes. Integrate it and resume course." Ramirez muttered under his breath, soldering a final connection. "Their drones are finicky with human systems. Last time, it fried half our relays." He straightened, holding up a makeshift stabilizer, a fused hunk of alloy and crystal scavenged from the signal's origin. "This should hold the core steady, but only if we vent the excess plasma manually. Lena, you up for suiting up?" Lena nodded, already pulling on her EVA harness, her cautious nature yielding to the urgency. She'd argued against the detour earlier, citing the uncharted risks, but now her wit cut through the tension. "Better than waiting for alien tech to turn us into a floating paperweight. Just don't make me calculate the math while I'm out there." The ship lurched suddenly, a groan echoing from the hull as the core's imbalance tugged at the inertial dampeners. Alarms blared, red lights painting the bridge in bloody hues. Hilara's fingers flew over the controls, stabilizing their spin. "Ramirez, talk to me." "Plans going south," he barked back, voice strained over the intercom. "The bypass is overloading, the crystals fracturing under the load." In the bay, he slammed a panel shut, racing to the manual override. The drone's approach pinged on sensors, a sleek council probe closing fast, but doubt not at Alara. Integrate it now and they might lose control entirely. Lena's voice crackled from the airlock. I'm out. Give me a vector. She jetted into the void, the asteroid field's debris glinting like shattered glass around her. The Endurance tumbled slowly, stars wheeling past. Back inside, Ramirez initiated the vent sequence, plasma blooming from the ship's vents in a spectacular azure arc, beautiful, deadly. But the core whined louder, the fracture spreading. Vorik's hologram flickered. Captain, the drone is interfacing. Accept the link. Alara hesitated, her brave resolve clashing with the rising stakes. One wrong move, and their rest declaration would echo as a eulogy. Hold pattern, she ordered the AI. In that suspended moment, the ship's fate hung on a thread of human grit, and the choice is yet to come. Captain Alara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, the hum of the Endurance's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with static as the ship's sensors strained against the nebula's interference, painting the bridge in swirling hues of violet and indigo. Her crew, 3 souls she'd handpicked from Earth's dwindling reserves, huddled around the tactical console, their faces etched with the fatigue of 3 days without proper sleep. Any sign of the probe? She asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. Lieutenant Marco Reyes, the wiry engineer with a knack for turning scrap into salvation, shook his head. His fingers danced over the controls, coaxing data from the void. Nothing clean, Cap. The nebulous soup is thicker than my Nana's minestrone. But I've got a ghost signal, faint like it's whispering from the other side. Ensign Lila Chin, the cautious navigator whose sharp eyes had saved them from more than one asteroid field, leaned in closer. If it's the Council's probe, they're not broadcasting on open channels. Could be a trap. Remember what happened to the Orion? One ping and poof, gone. Alara nodded, her mind racing through the options. The Galactic Council had branded Earth's Rest Initiative as stagnation, a refusal to join the endless march of progress. But, after centuries of burnout, humanity had chosen recharge over expansion, pulling back from the stars to rebuild at home. Now, with the Council's fleet closing in on Sol's outer rim, that choice felt like a declaration of war. The Endurance was their scout, sent to negotiate, or evade, before the Armada arrived. Adapt the array, Alara said, standing to pace the narrow bridge. Marco, rig a low-frequency bounce off the nebulous particles. If we can't shout, we'll echo. Marco grinned, his wit cutting through the tension like a laser. Echoes it is. Just don't blame me if it comes back with bad poetry. As he worked, a sharp alarm blared, proximity alert. Lila's console lit up with red warnings. Incoming signatures. 3 vessels, council markings. They're cutting through the nebula like it's butter. Alara's heart pounded. The plan had been simple. Slip in, retrieve data on the probe's findings, slip out. But the nebula's hazards, unstable plasma storms and gravitational eddies, had already claimed their auxiliary shuttle. Now this. Evasive maneuvers. Don't engage unless they fire first. The ship lurched as Lila plotted a course, the Endurance twisting through glowing tendrils of gas. Alara watched the dots on the tactical display converge, her brave resolve clashing with the real risk. Capture meant interrogation, and the Council had ways of extracting progress from even the most stubborn human. Marco's jury-rigged signal finally pinged back, a garbled transmission resolving into coordinates. Got it? The probe's adrift, 10-click starboard. But it's damaged, looks like it hit a plasma pocket. Helm to those coordinates, Alara ordered. Marco, prep a boarding team. Lila, keep us between them and the Council ships. The ensign's hands flew across the panel, but doubt flickered in her eyes. They're gaining, Cap. If we stop for the probe. We adapt, Alara cut in, her tone earnest, the weight of command settling heavier. Earth declared rest, not surrender. We get that data or humanity's breather ends today. The Endurance shuddered as a plasma burst rocked the hull, sparks flying from a console. Marco cursed, diving under to reroute power, while Lila coaxed every ounce of speed from the engines. Alara braced against the bulkhead, the nebula's eerie glow illuminating the determination in her crew's faces. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but in that moment their camaraderie felt like the only weapon that mattered. As they closed on the probe, the lead council ship fired a warning shot, the beams slicing harmlessly through the gas, but close enough to singe the Endurance's shields. "They're not playing," Lila muttered. "Neither are we," Ilara replied, signaling Marco. He emerged from the wiring, toolkit in hand, ready to spacewalk. The stakes twisted tighter. Retrieve the probe, decode its logs on Earth's defenses, and evade the fleet. Failure meant the Council imposing their relentless progress on a weary world, stripping away the rest humanity had so desperately earned. Marco suited up, his voice crackling over the comms. "Wish me luck, Cap. I'll bring back more than data, I'll bring hope." "Make it quick," she said, watching him cycle through the airlock. Outside, the nebula churned, a striking vortex of color framing his silhouette against the stars. The Council ships loomed larger, their sleek forms cutting inexorably closer, and Ilara knew this adaptation might be their last. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles whitening as the ship's alarms blared in staccato bursts. The nebulous tendrils clawed at the hull, ionizing the shields and sending sparks dancing across the bridge. "Reroute auxiliary power to the forward emitters," she barked, her voice cutting through the din like a laser. Beside her, Engineer Tomas Ruiz wiped sweat from his brow, his fingers flying over the holographic interface. He was the cautious one, always double-checking calculations, but now his eyes burned with the same fire that had carried them through the Council's blockade. "We've got incoming debris, big one dead ahead," Lieutenant Kira Hale shouted from the tactical station. Her wit had lightened the mood during the long haul from Earth, but now her tone was all edge, no jest. The scanner painted a grim picture. A rogue asteroid fragment, hurled by the nebula's magnetic storms, tumbling toward them at relativistic speeds. If it hit, the Endeavor would be scrap, and with it their last shot at proving humanity's worth to the Galactic Council. Ilara's mind raced. The initial plan, skirting the nebula's core to reach the neutral relay station, had backfired spectacularly. The storms had intensified, trapping them in a web of plasma flares. Communications with the Council were jammed, and the away team on the surface of Epsilon Prime was counting on that relay to broadcast their findings. Irrefutable evidence of a xenotech cache that could tip the scales in Earth's favor. Lose it, and the Council would declare their progress a farce, relegating humans to the outer rims forever. Options. Ilara demanded, scanning the readouts. Tomas hesitated, his caution warring with necessity. "We could vent plasma from the engines to create a deflection field. It's risky, might fry the thrusters." Kira spun in her chair. "Or I hack the debris trajectory, slingshot it back at the storm, but we'd need a perfect sync or it rebounds on us. Is trajectory with a targeted EMP burst. But we'd have to drop shields for a clean shot." The ship shuddered again, lights flickering as another flare licked the hull. Ilara waited, heart pounding. Tomas's idea preserved their defenses but could strand them. Kira's was bold, a human gambit born of desperation and ingenuity. "Do both," she decided. Tomas prepped the vents. "Kira, time your burst for when the field's active. We adapt or we die out here." Tomas nodded, initiating the sequence with a grim efficiency. Conduits hummed to life, and the Endeavor belched a shimmering cloud of superheated gas, forming a hazy barrier that warped the asteroid's path ever so slightly. Kira's fingers danced, overriding safety protocols. Firing in 3, 2. The EMP lanced out, a silent whip that nudged the fragment off course. It grazed the edge of the barrier, shearing off a chunk of hull plating with a deafening screech, but veered wide, tumbling harmlessly into the nebula's glow. Relief washed over the bridge, but it was short-lived. Alarms shifted pitch. Life support in Sector 3 was failing, seals breached by the impact. "Casualties?" Ilara asked, already moving. Kira checked. "Crewman Patel's suit is compromised. He's alive, but we need to seal it fast." Tomas was on his feet, grabbing a repair kit. "I'll go. You two keep us flying." As he dashed for the airlock, Ilara watched the nebula swirl outside the viewport, its colors a deceptive beauty hiding the void's hunger. They'd bought time, but the cost mounted. Delayed repairs meant burning fuel reserves, and the Council's deadline loomed. Earth had declared rest, but out here, survival demanded they press on, ingenuity their only shield against the stars' indifference. Kira glanced at her. That was close. Think the Council's spies saw it? Elara forced a tight smile. If they did, maybe they'll finally understand why we don't quit. The ship stabilized, but the lingering hum of damaged systems whispered of battles yet to come. Elena gripped the armrest of the shuttle's command chair, her knuckles whitening as the vessel shuddered through the asteroid field's edge. The view screen flickered with static, revealing jagged rocks tumbling like forgotten debris from some ancient cosmic brawl. Marcus hunched over the console beside her, his fingers dancing across the patched-together controls, sweat beading on his forehead despite the recycled air's chill. "She's holding Cap," he muttered, voice laced with that trademark sarcasm that kept the fear at bay. "But if that Council probe gets any closer, we'll be explaining human hospitality to a pile of scrap." Elena nodded, eyes locked on the blip closing in from the NAV display. The Council's Progress Initiative had turned the Outer Rim into a no-man's land, seating automated enforcers to guide reluctant worlds like Earth toward their enlightened fold. But Earth had pushed back, declared rest, a polite middle finger in diplomatic terms, and now they were smugglers in their own backyard, ferrying vital or to hidden outposts before the noose tightened. The shuttle lurched as a micrometeor grazed the hull, sparks erupting from a panel. Elena's mind raced. The cargo hold brimmed with unrefined iridium, Earth's quiet rebellion against the Council's resource grabs. Lose it and the Resistance outposts went dark. Lose the shuttle and Marcus's jury-rigged warp drive stayed a dream. "Evade pattern Delta," she ordered, voice steady. Marcus complied, banking hard left. The probe's laser warning painted the hull red, a polite request to surrender before the real fireworks. "Got an idea," Marcus said, grinning through gritted teeth. He yanked a lever, diverting power from life support to the rear thrusters. Air recyclers whined in protest, but the shuttle surged forward, slingshotting around a boulder the size of a skyscraper. The probe overshot, its sensors scrambling in the mineral interference. Elena exhaled, but the victory felt thin. Scans showed the field's heart pulsing with more probes, a web tightening. "We push through. Outpost Echo is 2 hours if we don't break." Marcus wiped his brow. 2 hours of playing dodge the buzzsaw. "Remind me why I signed up for this rest cure." "Because you're too stubborn to quit," she shot back, a faint smile cracking her resolve. The shuttle dove deeper, engines humming a defiant tune against the void silence. But as the rocks closed in, Elena spotted the anomaly, a derelict Council freighter half buried in regolith, its bays yawning open like a trap. "Detour?" Marcus asked, reading her intent. "No. Opportunity." She plotted the course, heart pounding. If they could scavenge its shield emitter, the probes might blind themselves long enough for a clean run. Risky with failing Atmo and incoming fire, but Earth's rest demanded gambles like this, clever ones born of grit. The shuttle aligned, docking clamps extending with a metallic groan. Elena unstrapped, grabbing her toolkit. "Cover me." 5 minutes. Marcus saluted mockingly. "Aye, Cap, don't trip over any enlightened welcome mats." She cycled the airlock, stepping into the freighter's ghostly corridor. Dust motes swirled in her helmet light, revealing conduits ripped open like veins. The emitter was amidships, if intel held. Her boots crunched over debris, each step echoing the stakes. Success meant shields for the fleet. Failure, a cold drift home. Alarms blared, probes converging. Marcus's voice crackled, "Company's here. Make it quick." Elena's gloved hands tore into the panel, wires sparking. The device hummed to life, but extraction fought her, bolts fused by time. A probe's beam lanced through the freighter's hull, heat blooming near her feet. She wrenched harder, the emitter tearing free with a screech. Back aboard, she slammed the hatch. "Install it, now." Marcus worked furiously as the shuttle undocked, probes swarming like angry wasps. The emitter powered up, a shimmering field enveloping them, scattering sensor locks. They burst from the field or intact, but the freighter's explosion lit the void behind, a funeral pyre for one more Council relic. Elena leaned back, the adrenaline ebbing into ache. One step closer. Marcus chuckled wearily. Yeah, but next time, let's declare vacation instead. The stars streaked by, outpost beacons winking ahead. Rest was a fight, but they were still swinging. The dim hum of the habitat module's life support filled the air like a persistent whisper, a reminder that even in the void, breath was borrowed. Captain Elena Vasquez leaned against the bulkhead, her fingers tracing the faint scar on her forearm, a memento from the first survey mission, when a micrometeorite had kissed the hull too closely. She watched as Dr. Liam Kerr tinkered with the salvaged comms array, his brow furrowed under the harsh LED lights. The array sparked once, twice, before settling into a low whine that promised nothing good. Still no signal? Elena asked, her voice steady but laced with the weariness of 3 days without sleep. Liam didn't look up, his hands moving with the precision of someone who'd once rebuilt a fusion core blindfolded during academy drills. The Council's jamming fields like a black hole for frequencies. But I've got a workaround, rerouting through the asteroid's magnetic echoes. It'll be rough, but if we punch it right, we might slip a message to the outpost on Luna. She nodded, though doubt gnawed at her. The Council had declared their Progress Initiative weeks ago, a grand edict from the Galactic Assembly that painted humanity's expansion as reckless, a blight on the stars. Earth had responded with what the diplomats called strategic repose, a polite way of saying they'd gone dark, pulling back fleets and silencing outposts to force the Council's hand. But out here on the edge of the Oort cloud, repose felt like abandonment. Their shuttle's drive had failed mid-jump, stranding them with dwindling oxy reserves and a rival scout ship, Kalari, sleek and predatory, circling like a shark scenting blood. A sharp alert pierced the cabin, proximity warning. Elena straightened, her hand instinctively dropping to the sidearm holstered at her hip. They're closing in again. Liam sealed the panel with a grunt, wiping sweat from his eyes. 5 minutes tops before they board. We can't fight them off forever, not with our power cells at 20%. The viewport offered a stark view. The Kalari vessel, all angular obsidian hull and glowing energy veins, drifting closer against the star-speckled black. Its crew, those enigmatic insectoid diplomats turned enforcers, had already demanded surrender twice, citing the Council's mandate. But Elena knew better. This wasn't enforcement. It was erasure, a quiet move to clip Earth's wings before the rest could rally. She activated the intercom to the engineering bay. Mira, status on the auxiliary thrusters? Engineer Mira Chen's voice crackled back, edged with her usual dry wit. Patched and purring cap. But if we fire M without main drive support, we'll be slinging mud in a hurricane. One good burn and we're either free or scrap. Scrap's better than cuffed, Elena replied. Prep for evasive. Liam, get that message out, tell Luna we're alive and the Kalari's playing dirty. As Liam keyed the final sequence, the array hummed to life, broadcasting a fragmented burst, coordinates, a warning about the jamming, and a human twist, a looped audio of Earth's old jazz standard, Take 5, masking the data in harmless noise. The Council might block words, but rhythm? That was ours. The ship lurched as the Kalari fired a grapnel beam, a tether of shimmering force latching onto their hull. Alarms wailed. Elena braced against the console, her mind racing through options. Fight? Outgunned? Flee? Power insufficient. But humans didn't fold, they bent. Mira, vent the forward tanks, make it look like we're leaking plasma, Elena ordered. A hiss echoed through the decks, followed by Myra's confirmation. Venting now. They'll think we're crippled. The ploy worked partially. The Kalari paused, their beam flickering as they scanned for deception. Liam's message slipped through in that moment, a digital whisper racing toward home. But the respite was brief. The enemy vessel adjusted, closing the gap with predatory grace. Elena pulled up the schematics on her datapad, eyes narrowing at the asteroid field's layout, a labyrinth of ice and rock they'd charted days ago. Liam, plot a course through the densest cluster. Mira, rigged the thrusters for a slingshot maneuver, use the rocks to build speed. It's suicide, Liam protested, but his fingers were already flying across the controls. One wrong angle and we're dust. Better dust than doormats, Elena shot back, strapping in. The habitat module shuddered as Mira ignited the AUX drives, the shuttle lurching free of the weakened grapnel. They plunged into the field, boulders looming like silent giants. Twists and dodges followed, the Kalari trailing but wary, their superior tech hampered by the debris. A rock clipped their wing, sending sparks dancing across the hull. Real damage this time. Elena felt the jolt in her bones, the sting of a cut on her cheek from a loose panel. Stakes climbed. One more hit and the oxy scrubbers would fail. Then, inspiration struck, born of desperation and that human knack for turning trash to treasure. Mira, deploy the mining drones, load him with spare fuel cells and set him loose as decoys. Make him glow like beacons. Seconds later, 3 small bots ejected, their lights pulsing erratically, mimicking a distress flare. The Kalari veered toward them, buying precious minutes. The shuttle whipped around a massive ice chunk, gravity's pull accelerating them toward open space. They burst free, engines straining, the Kalari ship entangled in the bot's explosive farewell. A chain of microblasts that scarred its hull but didn't stop it. Pursuit continued, but now Luna's relays would know. Earth wasn't resting. Captain Alara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, the hum of the Endeavor's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. Sweat beaded on her forehead, not from the recycled air but from the knot of frustration twisting in her gut. The view screen flickered with data streams from the derelict alien station they jury-rigged into a makeshift relay, its fractured hull now pulsing with jury-rigged power conduits snaking across the void like veins. 3 days ago this had seemed like a breakthrough, a way to punch through the interference jamming their signal back to the Council. Now it was a gamble teetering on collapse. Status, Mira? Ilara asked, her voice steady despite the ache in her jaw from clenching it too long. Mira, the wiry engineer with grease-streaked cheeks and a perpetual squint, hunched over her console, fingers flying across holographic keys. She was the cautious one, always double-checking seals and cross-referencing schematics, her optimism buried under layers of pragmatism. The flux capacitors holding at 80%, but the quantum relays are spiking. If we push the output any higher, we risk a cascade failure. The whole array could fry. Beside her, Kaler, the lanky Zarathian diplomat with iridescent skin that shimmered like oil on water, paced the bridge, his 4 arms gesturing in agitated loops. He was the witty counterpoint, quick with a quip to defuse tension, but his usual humor had evaporated hours ago. Earth's vaunted ingenuity brought us here, Voss. Clever humans, patching together relics from a dead civilization. But the Council won't wait forever. They're declaring progress, without us, expanding into sectors we claimed first. Ilara shot him a glance, her dark eyes narrowing. Kaler's species thrived on endless negotiation, but she'd seen the toll it took on him, the way his shoulders slumped when bureaucracy ground against action. We're not done yet. The rest of humanity didn't climb out of the cradle by folding at the first glitch. She turned back to the screen where the interference pattern, a swirling nebula of ionized gas laced with exotic particles, blocked their path like an impenetrable fog. The challenge wasn't just technical, it was existential. One clear signal burst could affirm Earth's stake in this frontier, preventing the Council's opportunistic land grab. Fail and their colony ship, adrift with 5,000 souls, became just another footnote in alien annals. The ship shuddered, a low groan echoing from the engineering bays below. Alarms chirped softly, then insistently. Mira swore under her breath, her hands blurring as she rerouted power. Incoming surge. The station's feedback loop is destabilizing. We need to vent or it'll overload the core. Ilara's mind raced, piecing together fragments of half-remembered Xenotech manuals. The Zarathians relied on elegant, pre-calculated harmonies for their drives, beautiful but brittle. Humans? They improvised, stacking failures until something stuck. Kaler, get on auxiliary controls. Stabilize the outer fields manually. Mira, isolate the relays and cross-link them to the auxiliary batteries. We'll bleed off the excess through the hull emitters. Kaler hesitated, his multifaceted eyes widening. Manual override? On Zarathian tech? That's like threading a needle in a hurricane. Do it, Ilara snapped, her tone brooking no argument. She unstrapped and moved to the central panel, overriding safeties with a few decisive taps. The bridge lights dimmed as power diverted, casting long shadows that danced across the bulkheads. Outside, through the viewport, the station's lights flared erratically, sparks of blue energy arcing against the nebula's glow, a fleeting aurora born of desperation. Myra's voice cut through the tension, sharp and urgent. It's working, sort of. Output climbing to 92%. But the batteries are draining fast. We've got maybe 10 minutes before we go dark. Ilara nodded, her pulse thundering in her ears. 10 minutes to bridge the gap, to send the proof of their survival and claim. The cost loomed large. If the surge backlashed, the Endeavor could lose life support, stranding them in the cold. But retreat meant yielding the sector, letting the Council's progress erase Earth's hard-won rest, the fragile peace they'd carved from exhaustion after centuries of striving. Kaler muttered something in his native tongue, a rhythmic chant that might have been a prayer or a curse, as he wove energy threads with his dexterous limbs. The ship bucked again, harder this time, but the signal strength ticked upward, piercing the interference like a knife through silk. "Hold it together," Ilara whispered to no one, her hands steady on the controls. In that moment, the bridge felt smaller, the crew bound not by rank or species but by the raw grit of refusal. They weren't heroes in some grand saga. They were just people, human, Zorathian, pushing against the universe's indifference, one failing plan at a time. The dim hum of the conference chamber's lights flickered like a dying star, casting long shadows across the polished obsidian table. Alex leaned forward, his fingers drumming a silent rhythm on the edge of his datapad, the weight of Earth's unspoken demands pressing against his ribs. Across from him, the Vexery delegate, Thaler, adjusted his iridescent robes with a series of deliberate clicks from his mandibles, a sign of impatience or perhaps calculation. Lena stood at Alex's shoulder, her toolkit slung low on her hip, eyes scanning the holographic display that floated between them like a fragile truce. "We cannot simply halt the expansion protocols," Thaler intoned, his voice a layered buzz that echoed through the translators. "The Council's directive is clear. Progress demands momentum. Your world's integration into the network requires full commitment. Resources, labor, innovation without respite." Alex met the alien's multifaceted gaze, refusing to blink. He'd seen this dance before in the endless sessions that had dragged on for weeks. Earth had joined the Galactic Concord a decade ago, lured by promises of shared knowledge, only to find itself squeezed into the machine of perpetual advancement. Factories on Mars hummed day and night, churning out components for Vexery starships, while back home families rationed sleep to meet quotas. The Council's latest edict? Mandate universal work cycles, no holidays, no inefficient pauses. Earth had pushed back quietly at first through back channels and subtle delays, but now with the integration vote looming, it was do or die. Lena shifted beside him, her boot tapping softly against the deck plating. "Momentum's great until it crashes," she muttered, just loud enough for Alex to hear. Her wit was her shield, sharp as the laser cutter in her belt, but today it carried an edge of real fatigue. She'd been up for 36 hours straight, patching the habitat's failing life support after a routine power surge, Vexery tech incompatible and unforgiving. The hologram pulsed, displaying projections, timelines of fleet deployments, resource flows from Sol system outward. Thaler's aides, a cluster of hovering drones, emitted soft whirs of approval. Alex straightened, choosing his words like steps on thin ice. The Council declared progress, yes. But Earth declares rest. Not surrender, balance. Without it, your momentum grinds to dust. Thaler's mandibles parted in what might have been a scoff. Balance is a human myth. Efficiency is survival. Refuse, and your allocation drops. Worlds have fallen for less. The chamber's air recyclers kicked in with a low groan, stirring the tension like dust in a storm. Alex felt the crew's eyes on him from the observation gallery above. Captain Reyes, stone-faced and loyal, her hand resting near her comms panel, and Mira, the young xenobiologist who'd bonded with one of Thaler's aides over shared sketches of nebulae. Small cast, tight bonds, but the stakes clawed deeper now. A vote against meant isolation. No more tech exchanges, no defenses against the fringe raiders probing the outer colonies. Earth would survive, gritty and ingenious as always, but the cost, lives shortened, dreams deferred, hung heavy. Lena leaned in, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. I've got something. That surge earlier? Not random. Their system's got a flaw, overloads when it hits peak sync. If we demo it right. Alex nodded fractionally, his mind racing. The plan they'd hatched in the dim corridors of the habitat. Not confrontation, but revelation. Show the Vexery their own progress could implode without human insight. But timing was everything. One misstep and Thaler would spin it as sabotage. As the delegate droned on about quotas, Alex keyed his datapad under the table, signaling Lena. She slipped away toward the access panel, her movements casual, like a mechanic checking a loose bolt. The hologram flickered again and Thaler paused, his drone swiveling toward the noise. Delegate, Alex said, voice steady, let's test your projections. Run a live sim, full integration load. Thaler's eyes gleamed. Bold. Proceed. Lena worked fast in the shadows of the adjoining conduit, her tools whispering against the alien wiring. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but her hands were steady, rerouting just enough to nudge the system toward overload without full breach. Back in the chamber, the holograms swelled, lines of data racing like rivers toward a dam. Then it happened, a sharp crackle, lights dimming as the sim stuttered. Alarms bleated softly and Thaler's aides buzzed in panic. Alex rose, calm amid the chaos. See? Your progress without our rest, it's brittle. We fix it together or it breaks us all. Thaler froze, mandibles clacking furiously. For the first time, doubt rippled across his exoskeleton. Outside, through the viewport, Earth's blue marble spun serene, a reminder of what they fought for, not endless grind but the grit to claim space for breath, for bonds unbroken. But as Lena emerged, wiping her hands, a new alert pierced the air. Incoming transmission from the Council Core. The vote was advancing early and with it enforcers inbound. Their clever adaptation had bought time, but the real test loomed. Would the Vexery bend or force Earth's hand? The hum of the shuttle's engines faded as it settled onto the cracked landing pad outside New Geneva's dome. Elena gripped the armrest, her knuckles still white from the descent through the storm-laced atmosphere. Beside her, Marcus wiped sweat from his brow, his usual wry grin absent, replaced by a tight-lipped stare at the viewport. The Council's fleet hung in orbit like silent sentinels, their sleek hulls glinting against the aurora. Progress, they called it, but to Elena, it looked like chains disguised as stars. She stepped out first, boots crunching on frost-dusted regolith. The air recyclers whirred faintly behind the dome's translucent walls, but the cold bit through her suit anyway. Dr. Hale waited at the airlock, his lab coat fluttering in the recycled breeze, eyes shadowed from nights poring over the data they'd smuggled back. You made it, he said, voice rough, pulling them inside with a nod that carried the weight of unspoken relief. No fanfare, no crowds, just the three of them, the architects of defiance. Inside, the command center buzzed with subdued activity. Screens flickered with readouts from the prototype rig they jury-rigged in the outer colonies. The gravitational shunt, humming at partial capacity, siphoning just enough energy from the Council's relay to power the grid without alerting the patrols. Marcus slumped into a chair, rubbing his temple. That backfire on Titan nearly cooked us. If the overload hadn't vented when it did. He trailed off, glancing at Elena, who busied herself at the console, fingers flying over keys to sync the final overrides. Hale leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed. It was clever what you did, reversing the polarity on the fly. Humans always find the workaround. His words hung there, earnest, without the flourish of victory speeches. Elena paused, meeting his gaze. The cost lingered in her mind, the colony outpost lost to the feedback surge, lives uncounted but felt in the quiet hours. Clever doesn't bring them back, she murmured, but she didn't stop working. Adaptation wasn't absolution, it was survival. Alarms chirped softly as the Council's signal pierced the interference net, a demand for compliance, laced with threats of embargo. Marcus snorted, keying in the response code they'd prepared, a loop transmission of Earth's own declaration, broadcast on all frequencies. Rest isn't retreat. It began, Elena's voice from the recording steady and unyielding. It's the space to breathe, to build without your strings. The words echoed through the dome, rippling outward to the scattered habitats below. Hale monitored the relays, his face illuminated by the glow. The shunt held, drawing power in measured pulses, enough to light the nights and warm the soil for the first unmonitored harvest. But the fleet stirred, engines flaring as scouts dipped lower. Elena's heart pounded, a rhythm matching the console's pulse. "They're probing," she said, voice low. Marcus stood, hand on her shoulder, a silent anchor. "Let them. We've got the grit they can't quantify." The probe ships veered off after a tense eternity, their scans bouncing harmlessly against the adaptive shields woven from scavenged Council tech. Hale exhaled, slumping slightly. "It's holding. For now." Outside, the aurora danced brighter, Earth's defiant glow pushing back the void. They gathered at the viewport, watching the horizon where the first green shoots pierced the regolith, progress on their terms, rest earned through scars. But as the Council's shadow lingered in the stars, Elena knew the consequence. A fragile peace bought with ingenuity and loss. Marcus squeezed her hand, his wit returning in a quiet quip. "Next time we make them chase us." She nodded, the weight settling like frost. Triumph, yes, but with the chill of what might come. The dome hummed on, a bastion in the night, humans unbowed.